28th of March, 1942, 1:34 a.m., Saint-Nazaire, France. 612 men ride into a German-held harbor on one destroyer and a swarm of small craft, Royal Navy sailors and commandos, heading straight for a dry dock gate like it's a front door. The Germans don't fully understand what they're looking at until the last minutes, and by then the ship is already cutting through nets, eating searchlights, and grinding forward under fire. By sunrise, the cost is brutal. 169 dead, more than 200 captured, boats burned out or sinking in the river, and the survivors fighting through streets with no easy way home. They're outnumbered in a defended port and still do it, so how? Here's what the enemy learns in raids like this. A sentry doesn't need to be beaten by a battalion. He only needs to be beaten by one man at one doorway at 1 second. Man for man, the most dangerous soldier isn't always the best shot. It's the one who can cross the last 10 meters without noise, without light, without hesitation, and solve the problem in front of him before anyone else can react. And that's where the strangest truth of Britain's secret war shows up. Sometimes, the difference between success and failure is not a tank or a bomber or a battleship. It's what fits under a sleeve. What you're about to discover explains why British special operations sometimes armed their men with tools that look less like modern weapons and more like something pulled from a medieval alleyway, because in the dark, up close, at breathing distance, technology isn't always the advantage. But first, you need to understand the problem that created this thing. In 1940, Britain is not planning a clean conventional victory. France has fallen. The map has collapsed. And London decides to fight a second war that won't look like a war at all. A secret organization is built to sabotage, to recruit, to smuggle, to burn supplies, to wreck rail lines, to seed resistance, set Europe ablaze. It is not a handful of romantics. It becomes a system. Training schools, research sections, workshops, and supply lines for weapons meant to be deniable and disposable. And the missions they're feeding are built on cruel logic. If you're a saboteur, a raider, an agent moving through occupied territory, your biggest enemy isn't a panzer division, it's a single guard with a whistle. It's the checkpoint where your pockets get searched. It's the moment a door opens and there's a silhouette in the frame. Guns are loud, knives are personal. Getting into a fight is a failure condition because fights make noise. Noise brings boots. Boots bring trucks, and trucks bring dogs. So the question becomes ugly and practical. What ends the problem fast, close, and quietly without requiring perfect conditions, without advertising what you're doing? Now, zoom out. This is where Hollywood gets it wrong. It loves the clean assassin with one elegant tool, one motion, one silent fall. Real clandestine work is messier. It's a chain of compromises. A pistol is great until the shot echoes down a stairwell. A knife is great until the target moves, or the hand slips, or the guard is bigger than expected, or the job becomes a grapple. A club is great until the man wears a helmet, or the strike doesn't land right, or you need certainty, not hope. So British workshops start thinking like engineers, not like duelists. And somebody asks a dark question: what if one tool could cover all three problems? If you needed blunt force, you had it. If you needed a blade, you had it. If you needed a wire for a silent finish, you had it, all in one. This is the weapon behind the title, a rare British close combat device associated with special operations thinking, described as a combination of club, garrote, and blade worn at the wrist, built to give an agent or raider multiple options at human distance. And the fact that it is rare matters, because it tells you immediately this wasn't standard issue. This wasn't meant for the average infantryman. This wasn't a mass program. This was a niche answer to a niche nightmare. And the nightmare is simple. You're close enough to smell tobacco on a man's breath, and you cannot afford a second chance. Look at the design as a concept, not as a gadget. It's a philosophy in steel. Collapse multiple violent options into one concealable package, worn on the wrist so it's there when a coat is grabbed, when a holster is unreachable, when a pocket is searched, when you're shoved against a wall. It's the opposite of a gentleman's weapon. It's the weapon of a person who expects to be surprised. And that changes everything. Because once you accept that premise, once you accept that the agent might not get to choose the moment, then your equipment stops being about elegance and starts being about redundancy. But here's the catch. A 3-in-1 weapon sounds brilliant on paper, and in the dark, it sounds even better. Until you ask the real question, who is this for? An agent in civilian clothes, a commando on a raid, a courier who needs something that can pass a casual search, a saboteur who wants a weapon that doesn't look like a weapon? Those are different people with different risks and different failure modes. Compare that to the most common clandestine tools of the war: simple pistols, simple knives, simple explosives. They win not because they're perfect, but because they're predictable. Predictable is reliable, reliable is survivable, and survivable is what the secret war is really buying. So why build something as strange as a wrist-carried combination club wire blade at all? Because Britain's covert war is an arms race of tiny advantages. Tiny advantages like, can you neutralize the guard without waking the next room? Tiny advantages like, can you do it without leaving evidence that ties it back to your sponsor? Tiny advantages like, can you do it if your hands are wet or shaking or tired or you're wearing gloves or you've been running for hours? Now, zoom in again, back to raids like Saint-Nazaire. You don't win Saint-Nazaire by being romantic. You win Saint-Nazaire by being ruthless about constraints. A defended harbor is layers, searchlights, flak, guard posts, patrols, barbed wire, locks, alarms, and the simple physics of noise. The British plan depends on time, minutes, not because minutes are dramatic, but because the longer you're there, the more the city becomes a net. And that is the environment that creates savage close-quarters tools, because the mission doesn't give you space, it gives you corridors, stairwells, doorways. The last 10 meters, that's the difference. Now, it's important to say this clearly. Most of the men who fought the secret war did not need a 3-in-1 wrist weapon to do their job. They needed discipline, fitness, tradecraft, luck. They needed to not be there when the net closed. So this weapon sits in a weird category, not common, not essential, but revealing, a mechanical fossil of a mindset that says, when the mission goes wrong, you don't rise to your ideals. You fall to your equipment, and that changes what you carry. The very existence of this device tells you the British were thinking about the worst moment, when your plan is broken, and you're suddenly face to face with the human obstacle you never wanted to touch, and in that moment, they didn't always want fair. They wanted final. But here's another catch. The simplest weapon often wins. A dedicated dagger is lighter, simpler, easier to maintain, easier to train. A dedicated club is simpler, less likely to snag, less likely to fail. And a complicated hybrid tool introduces new problems: comfort, concealment, reliability, training, and the danger of being found with something that looks like it belongs to assassins. This is why devices like this stay rare, not because the idea is foolish, because covert war is a ruthless filter. If a tool is awkward, it gets left behind. If it's hard to conceal, it gets rejected. If it's hard to trust, it gets ignored. And under stress, ignored tools might as well not exist. Now, zoom out and look at the timeline that creates these experiments. After France falls, Britain builds a secret machinery designed for sabotage and resistance support. Training expands, raids happen, lessons are written in blood. And in that phase, when a new kind of war is still being invented, you get odd prototypes, because nobody knows which small advantage will become decisive. So they build options, field them quietly, listen to feedback, and discard what doesn't fit. That's how clandestine equipment evolves, not from perfect design, but from hard experience and brutal selection. And the selection pressures in covert war are unforgiving. If a tool makes you feel slower, you drop it. If it makes you feel exposed, you ditch it. If it increases the chance that a checkpoint will end you, you leave it at home. Now, before we dive deeper, imagine this. You're an agent moving through an occupied city with forged papers. A checkpoint stops you. They search your bag, your pockets, your boots. Option 1. You carry nothing and you trust your wits and luck, and if the moment goes wrong, you're empty-handed. Option 2. You carry something small, brutal, and hidden. And if you're discovered, you're not just an enemy. You're proof of sabotage, proof you're not a civilian at all. Which would you choose? If you're here for real history, systems, constraints, and the tools people actually bet their lives on, subscribe. All right, let's start with the real purpose of a weapon like this. It wasn't designed to win a fight. It was designed to prevent one, because the goal of clandestine work is not to dominate an enemy in open combat. It's to cross a line, complete a task, and vanish. And the closer you get to your target, the more the war shrinks to human distance. A rifle gives you space. A pistol gives you a little space. A wrist weapon means you've accepted you might have no space at all. That's what makes it savage. Not the steel, the assumption. So here's the plain answer to the title. The savage British wrist weapon, described as club plus garrote plus blade in one, is a rare special operations close combat concept from the era of Britain's secret war, designed for extreme last resort situations at touching distance, where silence and speed mattered more than anything else. And now, go back to the opening image. Saint-Nazaire, a harbor full of fire, men running off boats into a defended town. In that world, the war isn't decided by speeches, it's decided by seconds. So what would you carry if you knew the last 10 meters might decide everything? Would you choose a simple, familiar tool you trust? Or would you choose a brutal, redundant weapon designed for the worst moment, knowing that being caught with it might condemn you instantly? Drop your answer in the comments. One subscribe identity line. Real history, not myths. Thanks for watching.